Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hi, red.olaughlin here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. Today we're on The Wise Ones, and today we have a truly wise one joining us. This woman is fantastic in so many different areas. Sometimes in life things happen. Sometimes you have to roll with the punches, but sometimes you have to take things into your own hands to make an improvement in your own life. And that's what our guest today, Julie Mejia, has done. So Julie, please join us.
Thank you so much for having me. Such an honor and a pleasure to be here with you today.
As Julie's coming up, I met Julie recently through a networking event, and because we both have an interest in natural, organic, and other aspects of health and wellness, we had a really nice conversation, and you really need to be on the show, but it goes much deeper than that. And I'm going to let her tell you her own story because normal person, everything's going well, something happens and it just can't quite fix it. So Julie, why don't you give us a little background on what happened before it happened, what happened, and then what have you done about it?
Well, thank you so much for asking. It's been a wild journey. I worked in the traditional medicine sector. I was working with adolescents with cognitive, behavioral, and psychological issues. I have a background in psychology with a concentration in cognitive neuroscience and research. And I got sick of writing research papers and started working in the nonprofit sector. And unfortunately, I got injured by a client, and I have autoimmune disease and developed a rare pain disorder known as reflex sympathetic dystrophy. I was put on every opiate you can think of. Not only did they not relieve my pain or assist with my condition, they made me extremely ill. So unfortunately, I had to take my health into my own hands at that point because I had zero quality of life. And unfortunately, the traditional route did not work for me. And when I exhausted all the traditional pain medications and opiates, I was put on ketamine. And when ketamine oral medications did not work for me, I was offered ketamine infusion treatments, which I declined. And started looking into natural remedies to help myself heal in a more effective manner, because I just, like I said, I wasn't myself on the opiates. I couldn't function. I was not a functioning member of society on them. So I really had to find another way. So that starts my journey into learning and discovering cannabinoid therapies and the holistic protocols that I've developed for different conditions and different ailments.
Now, the cannabinoid that you're using is your company's called Holistic Hemp. So it's a standard hemp that you're able to extract out some unique properties or unique extracts that make it safe, effective, etc. But that wasn't something that came up because you were on, if I remember our conversation, the ketamine that you were on had a lot of toxic substances in there. Is that correct? Or am I thinking of someone else?
You're thinking of insulin. We talked about a couple things when we talked. I also, a couple years after that injury, had a flu shot and then had an autoimmune response to the flu shot, which triggered diabetes in my body. So I am insulin dependent. And I'm having some issues with the additives being placed in all injectable insulin on a global scale right now. So that's another issue in itself. So we're fighting hard for a couple different things. I wrote my first diabetic healthcare bill this year, which was really exciting, but we'll touch base on that. But going back to the hemp stuff, yes, when I got into the industry and had thoughts of getting into it, my journey with hemp and cannabis started actually in Denver, Colorado. My brother had just moved out there. My first time ever in a dispensary was with my mom and my brother. And I talked to the bud tender and I said, "What do you have for pain? I am in tremendous pain. Nothing has worked for me." At this point, I was willing to try anything and thankfully found some products through the Colorado recreational program that worked well for my body, and immediately came home and applied for my cannabis card, my medical card in Massachusetts. So that's kind of how I started down my pathway. And at the time, unfortunately, there was no experience locally to be had. And question 4 was just on the ballot in 2016, and thankfully it passed. So when it did, I really wanted to immerse myself in the culture, but there wasn't really much locally to be had. So I ended up going to a conference out in Eugene, Oregon, met some beautiful people in Oregon who told me, "Hey, if you move here, we'll teach you everything you need to know about the hemp and cannabis industry." So I uprooted my life and I drove cross country and moved to Oregon back in 2017.
It's interesting. We have things in our bodies that we don't know about until somebody finds them. And one of the things I recently found out is something called palmitoyl ethanolamide. I don't know if you're familiar with that one or not, but it is a almost mirror image cannabinoid molecule that we make, and we make it throughout our whole life. However, as we get older, we make less and less. But it focuses on neuropathic pain. That's its real intent there. And you can buy it, pill form over the internet. I mean, it's easily available. So it just, some people have this thing about, well, it's marijuana and I don't want it or whatever. But we have molecules. You just make a little change in something, you treat it a little differently, and all of a sudden what used to be having a major problem in some legal and addictive and treatment, whatever, are not necessarily the same. I mean, we've come a very long ways. You talk about recreational cannabis, but what you're doing is much more than that, because you're actually taking that hemp, I'm going to use a molecule, and through some special proprietary techniques that you've developed yourself, able to extract out another molecule that's exceptional. I think you call it a magic pain eraser, if I remember right.
A lot of people call it that, for sure.
And so you have something that, by necessity and by passion, you've gone in and extracted something that works. And now you, as we talked earlier before the show, you have patents that are pending on this thing and various things. So it's not just, hey, this is my backyard thing, is what I do. This is a real business. This is something that works. We've proven it works. We, applying for patents on it, registering it, doing all those kinds of things. So that process of getting the molecule that you want out, how did you go about finding that? Or was that you just did a bunch of random ones and this one worked? So tell us a little bit about that process.
So throughout my journey in Oregon, I studied under a medical grower. His name is Steve Hunt. And Steve was doing cold processing on traditional cannabis. And I had been looking for rare minor cannabinoids. And when I say cannabinoids, THC is one, CBD is another. There are hundreds of others out there. And at the time, I had already gone to Canada in 2015. I was looking for rare minor cannabinoids in Canada for both myself and my aunt, who had cancer at the time. Could not locate them in Canada, could not locate them in the United States. And when I learned about this cold processing technology and how they extracted the acids from traditional cannabis, I was, blown away by the thought. I said, "Steve, how come no one's doing this extraction on hemp?" It's because we could target CBDA, CBGA, some of the rare minor cannabinoids that are not available. So we started that's how I started with the, the cold processing technologies through Steve, and really just kind of took it to the next level from what he taught me. Again, there's a lot of misconceptions out there. There are some psychoactive cannabinoids. The ones that I produce are not, which is great, meaning that it's not going to get you high. It's going to give you all the benefits of the plant without the psychoactivity. Does that make sense?
To me, it makes all the sense in the world, because I think some people they want the high. Some people are afraid of the high. And there's in between, state statutes here, there, and yonder that has different interpretations. So depending, who pulls you over for whatever, you don't know how to respond. But from a safety perspective, when they came out with the CBD, where, okay, it's got 0.00% THC in it or whatever, not detectable. Although I think in the military, they're going to probably say, don't even take a chance. It's not worth your career for something like that. So, reasonable people will do reasonable things, but you are not a reasonable person at that time because of the situation that happened. And you don't want to get strung out on some drug that just, you're not a Julie anymore. You're who knows. And so you had this degree, you're working clinical, neurological issues with clients. How did you get into, okay, well, I can extract this out of that. There had to be some transition. Was it just sitting there in the lab watching people do this? And then you said,
Yes, it's kind of a crazy thing. I had a background working. I started as a trimmer. I worked with 3 different medical growers, and then started working, doing a little extraction in the lab, and didn't understand why extractors were pulling apart the plant. I thought that, why not keep everything as nature intended it to be? And doing this cold processing technology truly leaves the plant as it's intended, with all the cannabinoids and all the terpenes from the raw organic material meant to be consumed as the flower would put it, So extractors were isolating things, taking stuff out, mixing it with other terpenes that were not conducive to the original flower, of the composition of the strain that they were working with. And I thought it was backwards. I didn't understand it. So until I started really playing around with Steve's cold processing technology and then advancing it further, did I find, by applying it to both myself, family, my community, getting feedback from them and letting them put it to the test. I truly found that the cold process, with all the cannabinoids and all the terpenes, as natural as possible, leaving the composition in there as it was intended to be consumed, worked better than isolates. That's how I personally felt, and a lot of people agreed with me.
Now you're using the term cold processing. I buy coconut oil cold pressed.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the same thing?
No, it's not. We're actually not pressing it. Pressing actually creates heat, which can in turn affect the cannabinoids and the terpenes, because everything burns off at a certain temperature. So not only is our finalized composition for our tincture patent pending, but our processing methodology is as well on both of the products that I have now are patent pending.
Okay, so cold press, I look at unrefined cold press for my coconut oil, organic. That's what the least amount of touching up any of it that I can possibly get. Yours takes it to a different level because, yeah, it's a cold press, but there's heat involved, and I understand that. That's why I wanted to ask that question. So when you're doing cold pressing, it's a proprietary process, generates as little heat as possible as to not disturb the chemical composition of the molecule, its structure, or anything else in there. So that to me makes a lot of sense from at least my background. And when you're explaining this to an audience that doesn't have a chemical background, you just say, we do no harm. We extract, we just reach in there, grab what we need, and it comes out as undisturbed as possible. You store it in an organic oil. Is that right? You mentioned olive oil. and then you
Correct.
have a preservative, which is another oil to extend the life of that tincture or that product that you have. So from an organic perspective, I'm not saying you're going overboard on it, but it sounds like that you're really and truly making the product as absolutely safe and as effective as possible, but user friendly and shelf life. Is that a fair way of saying it?
I would absolutely say so, because again, when you're dealing with sick people, you don't want to give them additional stuff that they're going to have to process out. I am chemically sensitive, so for me, I want to make sure that this product is as clean as possible for not only myself, but anyone that chooses to use it. This product is extremely safe and clean. We have pediatric patients taking it for seizures and a number of other conditions. It is safe for our pets. So, with that in mind, I wanted to keep it affordable and have it, at the highest quality. I just couldn't compare it to others on the market. I had tried about 50 different products nationwide with a number of different cannabinoids, and nothing worked as well for my body. So it really pushed me to take, a trauma and do something good with it. So,
How many people do you think have a situation like yours where a minor injury or maybe moderate injury, and all of a sudden they find out they have an autoimmune disease that somehow get triggered by the trauma or something else? Have you done much into what caused the new Julie to occur?
yes. So I have celiac disease, which is an autoimmune disease. I got diagnosed with that back in 2010. So if you already have autoimmune disease, you're prone to having others occur. So we've seen that now twice in my body, unfortunately. Once with the injury back in 2013, which triggered reflex sympathetic dystrophy, which is a neuropathic pain disorder. And then again in 2015, when I had the flu shot, which triggered late onset type 1.5 autoimmune diabetes in my body. Unfortunately, I am that 1% person. They do exist. There's a lot more of us out there than we realize.
How careful are you with your diet as far as just everyday foods that you eat? Obviously, from a holistic perspective, from an organic perspective, but knowing that you have autoimmune disease potential that you don't want to add to, what's a typical day or a week look like when you're buying food and preparing it for yourself?
So honestly, I am gluten-free. I've been gluten-free since 2010. I try to eat as organically as possible, avoiding pesticides, harsh additives. So I'm very food conscious of everything I put in my body, not even just food, but I'll give you a great example. During COVID, I stopped wearing makeup as much because, we didn't have to go to as many events and such. My body developed a sensitivity to traditional makeup, like from Clinique. I had used Clinique, my almost 20 years, and my body rejected it. My eyes would swell up. So again, I have to be extremely careful. I am very sensitive to toxic chemicals and additives. So my body will tell me, and it's just really being in touch with your body and seeing what feels good and what doesn't. And your body's going to tell you one way or another. So I'm very cautious about it.
I tell a lot of people, listen to your body. It's a clue. And sometimes you can take something, I can take something, my wife can take it, and she'll go bonkers because her sensitivity levels are so much lower than mine. So if I take two of these, I'll have to maybe cut one of them in half and see if that's okay for her, because she just truly has a very sensitive palate, so to speak, for any kind of a drug, because it just they affect her. She doesn't have other issues, but she just knows that she can't just go take a single pill just because it's one. And so we got to be real careful with that.
And everybody's different. Everybody's body processes differently, and when we're taking the tincture, for example, we start people off on the smallest amount because what might work well for me might not for you, and vice versa. Everybody's body processes everything differently. So, that has to be considered when taking anything, you know.
I've been doing a lot of research on nutrients for a program I'm doing right after this one, and you sit there and you read things, and so do not take more than this. Well, you know, I take 5 times that amount every day and have for years. Or you know, just because they get certain things that have been around, but nobody goes to prove or look at it or anything else. It's interesting how something gets so ingrained that it becomes law almost. And then, well, here's another article over here. It doesn't say that. And I'm sure you probably have the same thing within the cannabis realm of things, you know, that CBD, the THC, the other things that you're in there. What might have worked well for somebody in treating, let's say, medicinal marijuana for treating their pain. Now you have a medicinal non-marijuana, but a medicinal cannabinoid that doesn't have that stigma of the marijuana high or whatever else is in there, but works probably more effectively than the older treatment, but nobody knows about it. And so how are you getting the word out to people and letting them know, hey, you know, I got a magic paint eraser over here that you ought to know about?
It's kind of a crazy thing. You know, we had put out a press release when the patents were filed internationally to more than 500 outlets. And it was really, really scary and comical to find out. I had a friend that messaged me. I'll give you a great example. The Boston Globe chose not to cover our announcement. And it was a public service announcement at that time too, because, you know, people still struggling with COVID. One of our patents are for COVID symptomology reduction and prevention. And we were bound, you know, baffled by the fact that it didn't get picked up. And then come to find out, a friend of mine who had investigated what was going on told us the Boston Globe, Pfizer was paying them for paid coverage. So we were in direct competition of Pfizer, who puts out, you know, vaccines for COVID and such. So it really depends. We've gotten our stuff out there by word of mouth, by doing podcasts, just by, you know, going to events. I've presented at different things. You know, just word of mouth is a huge, huge way. And we get a lot of referrals. Hey, such and such is having this issue. I gave your number, you know. So we're starting to get recognized now within the medical realm as well. We have a few physicians now that recognize our formulations over at Hasbro Children's Hospital in Rhode Island, because we have a couple pediatric patients that take our formulations for seizures and other things. So, you know, it's slowly building. It's been a lot tougher to get the word out. There's a lot of censorship regarding hemp cannabis, even on the social media platforms. We can't advertise for it. It's against Facebook rules to have certain things. So there's some loopholes now, but again, we want to play by the rules. I don't want to get my Facebook shut down. So it's been slow in some regards, but again, we're organically growing at a beautiful rate, which is great.
The seizures you mentioned, that's a neurological issue.
Correct.
And when I was going to college, I was not necessarily babysitting, but I was being an assistant when I was there. Her husband had grand mal seizures almost daily. And so it's one of those things that I kind of got used to. But as I started studying things down the road, in the old days, back in the 20s and 30s, they just didn't feed them. No food turned out to be a very effective treatment for seizures. You know, so you put them on a 2 or 3 day fast, they would be normal again. And then, so it seems like that, just like the autoimmune response from gluten or other things, zonulin, there's things in there. Are you also allergic to casein and cheese or dairy products?
So that's funny that you say that, because when we work with pediatric or adolescents, that's one of the first questions I ask the families. What kind of diet do you have? Are you eating wheat and gluten? Because sometimes that can have a neurological effect or a cognition effect on our bodies. And unfortunately, A lot of times people don't consider, and physicians don't ask about your diet. They don't do that mind-body connection, and everything is interconnected. And what I've learned about holistic health is it all stems from gut health. So if you've had crappy diet, you're eating a lot of stuff with additives, a lot of preservatives, a lot of pesticides, that can affect everything in our body. So for me personally, I don't eat a lot of dairy. I don't eat a lot of casein and stuff. I'm very conscious about it because, again, the more stuff that my body has to chemically process out, the more difficult it is for me to just get through my day. So I try to just live my life as cleanly as possible, but that is a huge point that I bring up with all my clients. And one of the first questions I ask, because again, there's a number of other things that could be contributing factors. Lighting, as we've learned, can trigger the seizures. Stress, lack of sleep, just overall immunity and functionality can affect cognition.
Yeah, the reason I asked you about the casein is because molecularly it's almost a mirror image to gluten. And so you have gluten that can cause an intolerance, a sensitivity, a number of different ones. And people go, okay, I'm gluten free, but there's issues with that too. But they not necessarily looking at the dairy aspect because, well, I'm still having the same problem. But again, your body is reacting to that particular molecular structure. And sometimes that structure can change over time. But anyway, that's a different category. But with regard to asking the question, gut health and cellular health are probably, those are the two biggest things that I try to push. Your cells are healthy. You take care of autophagy. You get all that stuff cleaned out. Your gut, you keep it, balanced. And generally speaking, your immune system is probably going to thank you many times over because you're not sitting there giving it challenges on a daily basis. Do you do any fasting at all with regard to your health?
Yes. Yes, I do. Even as a diabetic, I do intermittent fasting. I try to give my body a break. I try not to eat after a certain time, and try not to eat, before a certain time, because giving your body that pause to allow it to just be, again, if you're constantly just filtering stuff through it, doesn't have time to just sit and repair itself. You need to have that rest period so that it can do what it's meant to do, which is to repair itself. And we have to give ourselves time to do that. So unfortunately, people do themselves a disservice when they're constantly eating because your body's constantly having to work and process it out.
It seemed like not that many years ago, the standard was, 4, 5, 6, 7 small meals all day long is the best way to go. I've never agreed with that because you never give your body blood sugar time to even get processed before you're putting more stuff in. And that's that gluten free. Sometimes it's got a lot more other stuff in there that you don't want to make up for the fact that it doesn't have gluten, which has benefits. I mean, it really does taste better with gluten. It's just that unctuousness, that smoothness in the tongue and everything. So there's reasons why, but then the gluten we have today is not the same gluten we had 80 years ago. It's been processed out with genetically modified this, that, and whatever.
Correct.
It's interesting how what we think is healthy is not as healthy as it is, but nobody knows because nobody spends any time telling anyone.
Well, here's the thing. That's the same people that invented the food pyramids back in the day, talking about how you needed to have as much dairy as possible and as much white bread as possible and this and that, all stuff that we know now aren't great for our bodies. But again, you have to ask yourself the question, where is the information coming from? Is there a purpose behind it? Meaning, are they benefiting from putting this information out the way they are? So you really have to explore it, even when I'm looking at research and reading papers, who funded the research? So you have to be, mindful of those things as well. I think it's extremely important because not all research is necessarily good research.
I occasionally see some study that was done and it makes no sense. But then you look at, okay, here's the sample size, here's what they did. That's not even a sample. I just, they already knew what the end result was going to be, and they had to prove it to publish it in order to have something to substantiate whatever. But that again goes into, what do you want to call it, ethically challenged research, et cetera. But anyway, getting back to your research and everything, where do you see this? You talked about the minor cannabinoid terpenes and other molecules in there. Where do you see this going? You've seen so much in the last 5 years. Where do you see this going in the next 5 to 10 years?
So from an industry perspective, it's scary right now because they're about to reschedule, which is a good thing because, again, certain states don't have safe access to any cannabinoids, or at least ones with THC. So that's a bigger concern, is not having safe access to some of these products. Our products are available in all states and they are legal in all states. So unfortunately, full legalization, I think, is going to be both good and bad because, again, we're giving a lot of control over to the federal government. And unfortunately, just historically speaking, the feds have not always done the industry right. These compositions were made illegal for many, many years, and our bodies have had a connection with them, so much so that we have developed the endocannabinoid system, which works in conjunction with the immune system. So unfortunately, I don't have as much faith in the government to do the right thing. So we're going to have to see where this industry heads at this point. Where we're headed from a company perspective, you and I had this conversation privately. I have been talking and working with a bioinventor on some cellular therapies that aren't actually considered cellular anymore. It's more of a protein therapy that I would love to start carrying in conjunction with the cannabinoid therapy because it just makes sense. I want to try to help people cure, or I shouldn't say cure, or treat the root cause of their illnesses. And a lot of times the traditional medicine sector and the care sick model that they've developed, they just put a Band-Aid on the problem, and that's not what we're about. We're trying to actually assist the root cause of illness, whether it be, a seizure disorder or, a pain disorder, whatever it is. We really want to get to the root cause of that and see about actually healing it.
Follow the money. That's one of the things that you'd be amazed at. You look at cancer. Most of it's a genetic disorder treatment as opposed to a metabolic disorder treatment. And the percentages of success are so much more on the metabolic, but it doesn't meet the standard of care in the United States. So you want that type of treatment, you got to go to some foreign country to get it. And their success rates are 20, 30, 40 times what it is in the United States. It's just interesting that sometimes the government gets in the way, but then again, who paid for what and when and how much, and just there's so many other fingers going on and snakes going through things, and it's an interesting world, and sometimes it's difficult to see through it. But
it's really concerning, in the 80s when the pharmaceutical companies and, medicine became for profit, the whole world got flipped upside down. And again, they don't make money on cures. They're not looking to cure or actually treat group. They're looking to push as many products, have as many doctors' visits as possible. They want to keep you sick. And that's the reality. I've seen it firsthand working in the traditional sector. And unfortunately, I am so happy to see it for what it truly is now, after becoming a victim of it. And now we can actually try and make good on that.
Well, you mentioned earlier that they don't treat the cause. A doctor or medical industry has a moral and legal requirement. If they know you have a health issue, they must treat it. And the treatments that are available primarily are pills, prescription drugs, might be surgery, might be something else, but most of the time it's a pill. But again, if you're not asking the question, well, tell me about your diet. Well, if you're missing 15 of the 30 nutrients the body needs on a daily basis because all you ever eat is, a burger every day and nothing else. I mean, there's some obvious things, but they don't even go down that road to find out what possibly could be the problem. And I think you hit it right on the head when you said you want to know what is a potential cause before you ever get to, let's understand where you start, get a baseline. Now we can start talking intellectually about what is really available to you as far as being able to help you. And I think when doctors start looking at it from that perspective, they're really and truly interested in helping you overcome whatever you have. And it may be just a simple change in lifestyle.
Correct. And you know what? You nailed it, because in regards to cancer, there's not one oncologist or cancer patient I've worked with that has had a doctor ask them, hey, what's your sugar intake like? There's a direct correlation with sugar and cancer. There's a ton of research out there about it. Yet oncologists, or if you go to a cancer center, right, for chemotherapy, they have cookies and juice and candy. They're actually feeding the cancer while they're getting treatment. So it's really, really concerning. There was a study that came out a few years back from the United Kingdom that talked about people aren't actually dying from cancer, they're dying from the treatment. There's a lot of proof behind that. I mean, some of these treatments were developed for biowarfare. So, I mean, read the history about chemotherapy and how that was developed. It's scary. So again, a lot of these illnesses can be treated with food. Food could be either medicine or your enemy. Supplements could be a friend or an enemy as well. So some of these small tweaks in lifestyle, right, can absolutely assist with major illnesses such as cancer. And I work pro bono with cancer patients. We have a 10-page protocol that I developed that talks about food supplementation, creating apoptosis in the body, which is cellular death, and using cannabinoids to assist with that. But again, I've never heard a doctor, how's your stress levels? What are you doing to manage your stress? That kind of thing. Stress is a huge contributing factor for a lot of cancer patients. But diet should be the first question they ask patients, and they don't.
We're getting down toward the end here. Who is a good customer for you, for your products? How do they get in touch with you?
Anyone and anyone that would like to try and benefit from our products, whether they have pediatric medical conditions and they've been referred by their physician, whether they'd like to try it for themselves, their pets. We are safe for the entire family. We're organic as possible. And people can purchase right online. It's very simple. If they go to our website, www.Harry solutions with an S at the end, .co, and they're easily able to purchase and they get their product within days. So I think that's the easiest way. We are starting to branch out into stores locally, so keep us in mind for that as well. Contact us and let us know where you are and where you'd like to see these products, and we're happy to assist with that as well.
Julie, fantastic. I really appreciate our time today. It sounds like we almost probably need to do another session because there's a lot of areas that we just brushed over that probably do need a little bit more attention. But you're looking at HH Solutions, as she said, Harry. HH stands for Holistic Hemp. hhsolutions.co, not com, but co. Take a look at our website. There's a lot of information there. I did a little research on that before I came on, so I felt comfortable asking some leading questions so we could get to where we needed to go. But Julie, thank you so very much. I look forward to seeing you again, and I can't wait for our next conversation. It's just really delightful chatting with you.
Thank you, Red. Such an honor and a pleasure to be here with you as well, and I look forward to it. Have a wonderful day.
Take care. I shall do my best. This is red.olaughlin again. We're on The Wise Ones. We just got finished talking with Julie Mejia, Holistic Hemp Solutions, and I look forward to having her back again. But if you have pain issues, talk to your doctor, talk to her. But anyway, take a look at the program we just had. A lot of answers there for you. Coming up here literally in the next 19 minutes is the Talking Heads show on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. I've been covering last 6-7 weeks or so a deep dive into nutrition. I'm going to try to start wrapping it up. This week I'm looking at the basic non-mineral, non-vitamin nutrients that are super critical for the body and what we should know about them. And then I'm thinking very seriously next week will probably be the wrap up on this one. So that being said, Red O'Laughlin here signing off on the Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network, and I'll see you very shortly again on Talking Heads. And with that, take care. Have a wonderful day. Bye now.
Hello, I'm children's author Diane Floyd Boehm, and I am co-host for several of the USA Global TV and radio shows. I joined because of the purpose of the USA Global TV and radio. They provide content for the viewers and listeners, an opportunity for people around the world to have their own show or even be a guest on an existing show. We truly believe in helping others get their positive message out to the world. We also have the opportunity for the listeners. You can watch on several platforms, and on YouTube, you can ask questions and even give a comment. We absolutely love it. I love being part of the USA Global TV and radio because I love positive messages, and who doesn't? And we need more of that in the world. We are a family, and we hope you will join us and become part of the family too. Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to Story Garden. Your host, Diane Boehm. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Diane Floyd Boehm tells wonderful stories that warm the heart, spark the imagination, and unite people and families across generations. For children, Diane's Harry the Camel connects with all of us who've ever wondered how different our lives might have been if only we'd been born something better, like a wonderful horse instead of an ordinary camel. In the end, we all learn along with Harry that there's nothing better than just being yourself. Diane's Little Girl in the Moon looks down on earthbound children and wonders if they know she's just like them. A story of love, home, and the bond between mother and daughter, its powerful theme that we're each of us different yet all of us the same plants a seed in children that promises to blossom within a loving and trusting grown-up. Diane's new biography, Rise, recounts the experiences of her grandmother, Ruby, to reveal the hidden strength of the human spirit. Ruby's story inspires all of us to become the best versions of ourselves. You'll find all of Diane's delightful books and much more at dianefloydboehm.com. Visit dianefloydboehm.com. That's dianefloydboehm.com.